Hello everybody, welcome back to the shop. I have another treat to share with you. I picked this plane up a little bit ago at an auction, and after studying it, I believe it is type 11, and it looks as though it has been used quite a bit in its life, but not lately. And I'll tell you, she's a beauty. My best guess is this is a type 11, although the trademark on the iron is the T trademark, which is the Stanley Rule and Level Company. I'll give you a close-up of that once I get it cleaned up. And the trademark actually comes from the Type 10, so I'm under the impression this might be a very early Type 11, or perhaps that's not the original iron. But it's a Type 11 because there are 3 patent dates back here, and that narrows it down to a Type 11 or Type 12, but the 12s have the large depth adjustment knob and the high knob in the front. And those two changes, the large depth adjust knob and the high knob in the front, came somewhere in the middle, the Type 11 to Type 12 transition. But typically those planes would have had the V trademark back here. So again, where this is an earlier trademark, I think this is a genuine Type 11, and my suspicion is an early one. Decided to refurbish this plane, and that turned out to be quite a project. So I'm going to break this up into a series of 3 videos. This particular video, I'm just going to do a deep dive to show you exactly what the plane is and what Stanley tools of this vintage had and didn't have. So enjoy. In the other videos, I'm going to show you how I went about completing the refurbish. And in another video, I'll focus on refurbishing and repairing the knob and the tote. So let's get to it. So very quickly, just to take it apart, the lever cap has a fair amount of surface rust on it and an intense patina. That's going to need a little bit of oil to free it up a little bit. And the iron and chip breaker, looks like there's been a fair amount taken off of the iron, but generally they look good. And let's see if I can catch the light for you to show you that trademark. There it is, Stanley Rule and Level Company. And inside here, the screws holding the frog down look to be in pretty good shape. The lever seems pretty snug, which is nice. And the Y yoke looks nice. But this screw has been replaced. I hope that screw didn't muck up the threads in the casting. Well, that's something I'm going to have to try to figure out how to deal with. And you can clearly see the tote is broken here. And there's a good chunk taken out of the horn section here. The brass nut over here looks like it's been chowdered a bit, although that one looks pretty gosh darn clean. I also noticed that the knob in the tote, I don't know how well it'll show up, but there appears to be something like a shellac or a polyurethane that's flaking off there, and you can kind of see it. And maybe it's just a discoloration, but I think I'm going to try to get that off. And again, this particular vintage, it does have the frog adjustment mechanism and the small depth adjustment knob. All right, gonna see if we can, well, that's on there tight. Okay, very nice. Looks like this is coming loose without too much of a fight. Very nice. Oh, I'm a little surprised. This is has a waist on the nut. That strikes me, the feature to a later model. And again, there's the obligatory few paint splatters, but boy, there's no cracks or checks. That's a beautiful knob. Just needs to be cleaned up a little bit. Oh, look at that. That one comes out. Very nice. And those threads look very good. I often soak these threads before I try loosening them. But let's just see. Oh, that's nice. That wasn't very tight. And that one is pretty tight. Came loose. Alright. Again, these 2 screws look pretty rusty, but no chowdering on them, which is a pleasant surprise. And a closer look at the frog. Awful lot of dust and dirt on it, but it looks as though the Japanning is still up here, so that's a pleasant surprise. Yeah. This bad boy might be in better shape than I thought it was. Looks like somebody took some steel wool to try to shine that a little bit. And I noticed the same thing on the side of the plane. Looks like somebody gave it the obligatory steel wool cleanup, but didn't bother to get any of the dirt or grime off of the Japanning. Take the screw out, a fair amount of grime on it, a little bit of friction back here. Knob actually looks in pretty good shape. Okay. Here's the knob, looking pretty good. Yeah, it's going to take a little more work. Oh, look at that. This is a solid nut, so we don't have matching nuts on the furniture. And boy, that one's pretty chowdered up. Obviously not original. Oh, look at that. The tote has been glued. That's a shame. Somebody repaired it and did a pretty mediocre job. Eh. You know, it always frustrates me. You'd figure somebody who owns a hand plane would be pretty skilled when it comes to working with and repairing wood. And usually a good hardwood like rosewood, when it breaks nice and clean. But yeah, I'll have to give that some thought. Boy, that's in pretty good shape. A lot of gunk on it, but I don't see any chowdering, which is nice. Yeah, I also noticed on the bottom of the tote, looks like a couple nails and a hole there, possibly for a third nail. And on the heel of it, you can see there's some cracking as well, possibly from that nail. It's funny, I was examining the tote here, and I have seen something I've never seen or even read about. I'm going to try to catch it on the camera, but it looks like the tote is made from two halves, left and a right, and they are keyed together. And there's a very clear seam where it's low here, high here, low. So kind of a tooth pattern where one nests into the other. And you can also see a line here. It goes across and it dips down, comes over, dips back up, back over. And the same sawtooth pattern on the back, and you can really see it here where it delaminated. However, I don't see any evidence of it on the bottom. And this doesn't feel overly heavy. Doesn't quite feel like rosewood to me. Not quite heavy enough, but maybe it was a less dense piece of the tree. And here's a close-up of the lettering behind the frog. It says patented, that's P-A-T apostrophe D, March 25th, 02, August 19th, 02, and April 19th, 10. Now let's just take a couple minutes to take a look at what these patents were all about. This is the one patented March 25th, 1902 by H. Richards. And it's a pretty long patent. It's like 6 pages. Fairly difficult to read, in my opinion. I'll give you the nickel tour of what it means. At the beginning of the patent, he describes that one of the challenges in manufacturing a hand plane is that you want the body of the plane, the sole, to be made of relatively thin cast iron so that it stays rigid and it's not overly heavy. But you need the frog seat to be relatively beefy so that you can get some screws into it. And part of the challenges in manufacturing is that the really thin sole inside cool at one rate, while the beefy frog seat, having a fair amount of mass, cools slower, and it can create thermal stresses. And when you go to finish the body, so he describes, you can run into problems. So he came up with an idea to create a frog seat that gives you the benefits of a thick and beefy frog seat, but doesn't have the mass, and hence the challenges of finishing it and thermal issues. And there's a few diagrams here, but I think these two down here, figures 4 and 5, kind of give you the idea of everything he's talking about. Let's check out figure 5. This is the top view. So there's a few things to notice. First of all, you don't have a big beefy frog seat. You've got this shelf sort of in the back, or a truss or a rib that's number 7. And 7 stands a little bit proud. He's got it labeled 7A here, of the two bosses for the screws. The two screw bosses sit a little bit below the level of 7. And then out in the front here, there's another platform that he labels number 14. And over here in figure 4, you can see it's got the seat, but the front of the frog, the 2 feet in the front, rest on the front platform. And then the back of 7 here, you can see there's that little relief where the screws are. So as you clamp down on the screws, it really pulls down tight on the frog and gives you good seating back here at 7A and back up here where the front of the frog meets 14. And this platform 7 and 14 are milled parallel to the sole, and the surfaces of the frog are also parallel, so that as you slide the frog forward, closing the mouth, it all stays parallel. And I think that's a reference to the older bedrocks that had a sloped bed, and as you slid the frog forward, the iron would plunge necessarily a little deeper. He also spends a little bit of time talking about an improvement in the cam lever, but that's only a couple paragraphs of the 6 pages. And from what I gather is his idea was to put a flat on the back of the cam, so that as you rotate this cam and engage the cap iron, it hits the flat, and that flat causes it to stay locked. This patent claims that another advantage to having this platform 14 is that it makes the body of the plane a little bit thicker and beefier right at the rear of the mouth. Traditionally on older planes, this was very, very thin cast iron and very weak and subject to chipping. So that's the essence of this patent, and if you're interested you can read it, but I'll scan down through it, and like I say, I found it to be, in my opinion, excessively wordy. So that's what we got for this one. Okay, the patent with the date of August 19th, 1902 is from a guy, coincidentally, named A.W. Stanley. I have no idea if there's any relation. But this patent is for a rib that sits in the frog seat. And this rib, if you read the patent, is made basically to stiffen the area of the plane body where the frog seat is. And I can only imagine after the previous patents of trying to make it extra thin, maybe they decided adding a rib for strength was a good idea. And here you can see in the top diagrams he's showing 2 ribs and 2 slots, hence in the frog. But in practice they just went with the 1 rib, as we all know. So this one's pretty straightforward. Ironically, they don't talk about this central rib and slot acting to help locate frog, and that's a little foreshadowing because that has to do with the next patent that came about 8 years later. And here we are on that one, on the patent that's dated April 19th, 1910. That's exactly what they're talking about, is using that center rib to help locate the frog. This is a patent by E.A. Shade. And if you read down into it, it's pretty straightforward, but he just describes, you put a very accurately milled slot in the frog and a accurately milled rib in the frog seat. And he also comes up with a way to add some sort of fine-tuning adjustment to the fork that seats in the frog adjustment screw. So with these improvements, if you remove the frog and you put it back in, it should land almost exactly where you took it out, and that's the point of this patent. And there it is. Well, that's all I got for this one. Hope you appreciated it. Check out the other videos in the series where I go into greater details on how I restored the knob in the tote and ended up refurbishing the entire plane to turn it into a really nice user. So I appreciate you coming by. Hope you got something out of the video, and like I always say, stay safe, take care, keep your eyes out for the next one.